Hello, and thank you for joining us for Interviewing with Confidence virtual program of the WorkOne in Allen County Public Library. My name is Joanne, and I will be the host for today's program. Our co-host is Christella, a librarian at the Allen County Public Library.
Hi everyone. Today's program is being recorded, and take it away, Joanne.
Thanks, Christella. WorkOne has programs for equal opportunity, and also auxiliary aids are available upon request with individuals with disabilities. Many times whenever I do a workshop with interviewing, I always kind of like to stop and ask, first of all, do you have confidence for a job interview? Many people will say yes. Other people will say, oh, I get really nervous. And you know, being nervous, I think, is just being human. But also, other questions that you might have would be, what should I wear? How should I act? How do I answer questions? And we're going to be looking at some of these today to help you feel a little more comfortable and to showcase your skills more in an interview. The agenda for today is, what is an interview? Knowing yourself and your job objective, preparing for an interview, the types, employer expectations, speaking with confidence, commonly asked interview questions, practice questions and answers, and what to expect after the interview. What is an interview? I like to think of the interview as a connection between an employer and candidates trying to find the best fit for the company culture. Now, I want to say in person, but with technology nowadays, it's more than just being in person. You can have an in-person interview. You could also do it virtually like we're doing it today. Plus also there's phone interviews as well too, which we'll cover a little bit later. Some of these are things that they're looking for, employers are looking for. It could be communication. Will you be able to communicate effectively? For example, if you're feeling something is not right, or if you're, have you ever complimented a coworker? Those things are important if you can share your feelings, but in a constructive, professional way. Technology skills. Are you able to train on equipment? It could be a computer, could be in manufacturing, a machinist. Also, to personality. Will you fit in with the internal and external customers? Internal can be your coworkers. External can be the customers, whoever is buying your service or your product. This is also the time for you to determine if you are interested in working for this employer. Knowing yourself. This is very important to know what kind of work I want to do, the skills, the background, the skills that I need. For example, for myself, I know I like the office environment. I knew this ever since I was like in high school. I enjoy getting up in front of people and talking, so I don't mind doing presentations. So I know doing presentations, working in an office, I know works for me. I know a lot of people come into the WorkOne office and say, I could never do your job. Working in an office is not for me. So again, what are you good at? Sometimes the kinds of hobbies you have or what you enjoy doing in your free time can also be an indication too. Also, to knowing what kind of salary and wages you want to earn. In other words, can you afford to work for that company? Those are questions that you might want to consider before the interview. Knowing your job objective. I'm just going to cover on a couple of these. Again, it's knowing the type of work you want to do, the type of environment. Do you like working inside an office? Do you enjoy working in manufacturing? Do you like working outside? Do you like working in landscaping? Do you enjoy being on top of a roof? Again, what do you feel comfortable with? And knowing what the employer wants from you as a job seeker. Know the position. This is so very important. Knowing the typical duties, responsibilities, again, the salary range, the work environment. There is a website that I I actually have an email sent to me on a daily basis. It's called InsideIndianaBusiness.com. And InsideIndianaBusiness.com can give you information around the state of Indiana about different businesses that are coming to Indiana. Maybe there are businesses that are going out of business. It talks about labor market. It can talk also about colleges. It also talks about maybe if a company has a grant or something. So I would encourage you, if you have an email address, you could have this sent to you and you can learn more about what's kind of going on around the state of Indiana. Also, too, it's important that when you do interview with an employer, that you do the research. How can you do that? You can come to the Allen County Public Library. Librarians here I know will help you. Also, you can come to the WorkOne office. And this is where you can go onto the website. You can know something about the company. What's their mission statement? Do they make a product? Do they have a service? Or, for example, let's say they're on, they might be on the Wall Street. Have they recently received a grant from the county or the state? These are all things to be aware of and to know something about the company. The more you know about the company, the more you're going to impress the interviewer. You want to prepare your interview folder here. Now, there's a list, and also you have access to a handout. It's a 12-page handout. And there are several of these today, but I'm just going to highlight a couple of these knowing for your interview folder. It's really important that you have extra copies of your resume. For example, what if you go into an interview and there are 5 people interviewing you? Are you prepared for it? Make sure you have enough copies. Also, make sure that you have your identification. This could be a driver's license, could be certificates, training, licenses. Make sure that you have those available. Also, to know where the location of the interview is. There's nothing worse than going to a place and they say, oh, you're at the wrong location. So make sure that you know the location ahead of time. You might want to drive there the night before if you can. Also, be aware of the interviewer's name and also have letters of recommendation and references with you. References. These are individuals who can verify and elaborate your professional experience. This is very important. We're going to talk about professional and personal in the next slide or two. You want to make sure that people will speak highly of you. In other words, let's say you think of someone that you've worked with, say, maybe 5-10 years ago. Are you in touch with that person? What if that person can't remember you? It's really important that you keep in contact with your references. Make sure you have up-to-date emails along with phone numbers, maybe addresses. There's nothing worse than if an employer tries to call a reference and the phone is not working or is no longer disconnected. That's kind of an embarrassment. And also, too, what kind of impression will that leave for the employer? What to include on your references? It's always a good idea to have the name, the department, the title, the address. Again, make sure you have current information and you have your references permission first. How many references should you have? Usually professional would be 3 to 4. Personal can be 1 to 2. Now, professional could be an owner of a company. It could be a professor. It could also be a coach. It could be a supervisor. Could be also a coworker that you've worked with. Personal could be maybe a neighbor. Sometimes it could be a family member, a friend, someone again who will speak highly of you and who can speak on your behalf. I would encourage you to have more professional than personal, because many times employers are going to say for a professional, how did that person do on the job? Where the personal reference, they're going to speak highly of you anyways if they're really a true friend or family member. But do they know how you work? So it's important that you have more professional than personal references. The attire. How do you want to be presented to the employer? Usually, it's good, common rule is to dress one level above the normal workplace. For example, I know in our office, we're kind of business attire. So we don't wear blue jeans, but we can wear dress clothes, can wear dresses. Also, too, if you're in a manufacturing environment, again, this is my own personal perspective. I would say if I was interviewing for manufacturing, I would never wear blue jeans. I know there are a lot of dressy blue jeans, but for myself, I would wear more like dress pants. Guys, you could wear something like a dress shirt, something with a collar. It could even be a golf shirt, something with buttons. It looks just a little dressier. I know one time in our office, there was a person who came into our office and this person was interviewing. And I noticed this person didn't have socks on. I thought, wow, I didn't say anything. That person later did not get the job interview, but I also talked with other coworkers and my coworkers had noticed it too. So you never know. So make sure that you are dressed appropriately. Pre-employment testing. This one can be divided in aptitude, personality, drug, skills, integrity, and a background check. Employers many times will do this to see if you're a good fit for the company. We're going to just spend just a few minutes on the screen just to discuss a little bit about each one. The aptitude. The aptitude can be written, it can be verbal, it could be reasoning, it can be numerical. Here in the WorkOne office, we have what's called prove-it assessments. And sometimes with prove-it assessments, we want to know if the person would have the skills needed for that. So again, that might be one that employer may use. Personality. The employer many times will see a personality test. And I know from different people I've talked to, they've said, well, the employer will ask the same question maybe 3 or 4 times, but they'll reword it. So again, how would you answer that? Again, trying to be yourself and being honest. The drug testing. Many employers nowadays are doing more and more drug screening. It could be hair follicles. It could also be different kinds. It might be a mouth swab. I would encourage you to be aware of that. And I've known different people they've come in for the interview, they've done great, but many times they didn't pass the drug screening. So again, what kind of an image do you want to have for the employer? The next one would be skills. The skills can be a test. You want to make sure that it's valid. And also it's an assessment. It could be for a job performance for an employer. For example, an example could be a typing test. And what if the employer wants you to type 60 words a minute? Maybe data entry. Some employers may have a ruler test. And we have again, like I said, prove it, where some employers want to know, can you read a ruler? Can maybe reading skills, could be different kinds of background. So again, the employer needs this to see if you're going to be a good fit. The next one is integrity and honesty. In other words, are you going to be shopping on Amazon during work time? I hope not. You want to do that on your break or your lunch, or do it on your cell phone if you can. But actually, you could be robbing employers of time. So again, it's being ethic, values, being honest with that. And employers are looking for that. I know in our WorkOne office, we work with a lot of Social Security numbers. And I know that we have confidentiality. And many times people come in and say, will you remember? I said, no, it's confidentiality is your social security number. I do respect your privacy as well as for anyone. So again, we have to be mindful of that. And last but not least is a background check. Employers want to know who you are. For example, they want to identify your identity, your verification. It could relate to hiring, good or not so good, inaccurate information. It also could relate to federal and state jobs. Could be a driving, it could be credit. It also could be criminal, sex offender, or even civil lawsuits. Pre-employment testing tips. Again, I'm just going to cover a couple of these. My best suggestions would be get a good night's rest, go to bed early if you can, maybe eat breakfast, dress comfortably. Do you get nervous? That happens to all of us. Take some deep breaths. Just say something to yourself. Hey, I can do this. I'm going to be fine. Make sure that you read all the instructions carefully and make sure you don't leave anything blank on it. Because if you leave something blank, you could be robbing yourself of a job opportunity. Different types of interviews. We have traditional, panel, phone, group, virtual, and recorded. Which one is your favorite? My favorite, of course, is the traditional, the one-on-one. I still like meeting people in person, talking to them, looking people in the eye, giving good eye contact. Also, the next one is a panel. The panel can be 3 or more. For example, what if you go into an interview and you see 4 people interviewing you? Are you intimidated by that? If you are, try to practice and having confidence. Greet each person if you can with a smile, having eye contact. This is an example that companies will use many times to save time. Another favorite one is over the phone. If you do over the phone interviews, phones can precede the traditional. I know some people, when they get home from work, they're going to have like a phone interview. I had a friend one time, she went out to the garage between the dogs, the kids, the husband. It was too much noise. She had to go out to the outside or to the garage just to have a little quiet. Also, the group interview. What does this mean? For example, I could be having 4 or 5 prospective candidates all in the same room. We're all vying for the same job. What's the goal of the group? Number one, it can tell the employer how you interact with others. Do you have a leadership style? Are you more kind of a follower? There's nothing wrong with either one. Also, too, how focused are you? Do you participate? The 5th one is virtual, like we're doing today. It can be internet-based. More and more now with the COVID, more and more classes are doing college courses, interviews are doing virtual. So you want to make sure that you have a good internet base and that your computer is working. And last but not least is recorded. This can be typed or recorded. Questions could be typed ahead of time, and then you're going to answer by typing. And again, be aware of this if they're typed or recorded. Preparing for the phone interview. Again, I'm just going to check a couple of these. If you have a cell phone, please make sure that your cell phone is charged ahead of time. Also, too, sometimes I find when I talk to different customers on the phone, sometimes I find the landline has a better connection than the cell. But more and more people now don't have landlines. So make sure your phone is charged. Please make sure that your that the person calling can get a hold of you. Make sure that you have a quiet environment, and you may want to dress for the interview as well too. I know some people will have a nice shirt on, and then they'll have pajama bottoms on. Is that nobody else sees that except for you, but make sure that you're aware of it. Make sure that you can show interest, that you speak clearly. If you can smile, that will come through for the telephone interview. Preparing for an in-person interview. Make sure that you have enough copies of your resume. Practice interview responses with the questions. This is something you don't want to practice the night before, but have your questions ready. It's a good idea to practice your answers. At the end of this presentation, the Allen County Public Library, they do have some books available on interview questions. Also, WorkOne can work with you too. We have career advisors who can do mock interviews. How are you presenting yourself? We can help you show the best of you. Make sure you're dressed appropriately for the interview. Again, clean clothes. Make sure that your hair is clean, groomed, fingernails clean, and also personal hygiene as well. Make sure that you have limited makeup, perfume, or cologne. Sometimes if your cologne, or if you enjoy wearing that, it could be too strong. Many people nowadays are very sensitive, so make sure that you're mindful of that. Jewelry and tattoos. Again, if you're not sure about the jewelry, like if you're married or something, you could have like a wedding band, but you might want to be careful of the jewelry. I've seen women come up to our office, they'll have 15 bracelets on. They're beautiful, but they make a lot of noise. Is that something that you'll want to present to the employer? So again, be careful. If you think the piercings or tattoos are too much, remove them. More and more employers are acceptable to tattoos. If you're not sure, you might want to cover them. Also, research the company and make sure that you know the location of the interview. Preparing for the virtual interview. There are many different types of programs. Today we're using Zoom, but there's also Skype. I've used Microsoft Teams, and I've also used GoToMeetings. So again, whichever one the employer is using. Sometimes they will send you a link, so you can click on the link and it will take you there. Also, sometimes if that doesn't work, you might use the phone where you dial in a phone number, press a couple of buttons, and you may also connect to that too. So again, be aware of the form that the employer is using. Being prepared for the virtual interview. Prepare as if you're doing it in person. How is the lighting? You're not going to glow in the dark, are you? I hope not. But make sure there's good lighting. Make sure that you have a camera, microphone. Make sure your environment is clean. I know behind me right now, I've got a clean environment. If I was at home, that's a different story. You'd see my TV, would see some pictures. I've got a lot of stuff on the wall. So I would have to kind of work on my stuff at home a little bit to have especially the background. But make sure you have things neat and clean and in an orderly manner. You don't have a second chance to make a positive first impression. It's really important to make a good first impression. Many times, make sure that you are to the interview 10 to 15 minutes ahead of time. I know this past week we've been doing some interviews for our office, and I noticed a couple of people coming into the front desk, and I know they came, it looked like maybe 2 to 3 minutes ahead of time. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but I would encourage you maybe 10 or 15 minutes if you can. Be respectful of other people. When you go to the front door of the business, greet that person. You never know. That person could notify the interviewer. I know different times people have come into the front desk, they've smiled, they've been helpful, very friendly. I sent an email to my supervisor saying, hey, this person seemed really respectful. So again, sometimes that can make a difference. Make sure that you have good eye contact. You don't have to be staring at the person, but again, showing that your interest. Firm handshake. I know in today's world, many people maybe are not doing handshakes, but again, you can still smile by the look on your face. If you have a mask on, by your eyes, or even by your body language, or just the way you might present yourself. Nonverbal communication. This could be a whole workshop on itself. And again, I'm just going to highlight some of the ones that I think might be most important. The do's. Again, as I say, have good eye contact. There's nothing worse than looking down and keep reading and not having eye contact. I would feel very embarrassed. There's going to be times you might have to look away, but make sure you have good eye contact. Stay positive. Do not badmouth, never badmouth a former employer. Never do that. Make sure you have good posture. Are you a person who likes to talk with your hands? You make noise with your feet? I know we all have nervous habits. If that happens, we all kind of talk with our hands, but maybe put your hands together. Put them on your lap. Maybe put your hands like on your thighs or something. And you can still do that in a positive way without being too awkward. Also, to be prepared for awkward silence. There are some times that an employer may ask you a question. I'm not saying that you have to sit there for 5 minutes and not answer, but sometimes just thinking for a few seconds and pausing is okay to do. Don't chew gum, candy, or tobacco. Believe you me, there's nothing better I like than having a chocolate candy. Be careful of that. Save that for another time. Many people will smoke to calm down their nerves. Again, be very careful because that smoke could linger on your clothes and it could leave a smell, which might be the employer may find distasteful. Again, good eye contact. Don't have to stare. Be careful of your emotions. Have you ever had an interview and you started getting emotional? I know. What if you have a question that the employer asks and you do find yourself getting emotional? We're all human. That can happen. Just take a second. Try to take a deep breath and continue on. If you think you're showing your emotions may come during the interview, you might want to practice. Practice maybe with some family or friends, or practice within a mirror. Also, no cell phone, no food, no children. We've had people coming into our office, the cell phone goes off. We've had even people picking up the cell phone and starting to talk. There is nothing more distasteful. I think it can become very inconsiderate and it lacks respect. So put away the cell phone or silence it. Did you know employers have a wish list? What are they looking for in customers? Prospective job candidates. They're looking for good communication, positive attitude toward work. I think we've all had days that maybe we haven't been in the best mood. I know sometimes it's hard to cover up. Maybe you're going through a rough time in your personal life. Maybe you've got health issues, and I know that's really rough to do. But try to be positive. Try to put your best foot forward. Try to show confidence and flexibility. You never know What would happen if 2 or 3 people do not show up for work? Are you available to maybe work the front desk? Can you do the phones? Can you cover machinery for a coworker? So again, flexibility is very important for an employer. Also, self-motivated. How do you gain self-motivation? Well, there's workshops, there are books you can read. Again, I think it's something that you have to practice. Being self-motivated, I don't have all the answers, but I think just kind of working on it, and sometimes just working on it a little bit at a time helps. There's leadership. Can you take the initiative for something? Are you teamwork? Do you have critical thinking skills? In other words, can you think outside of the box? What happens if something doesn't work? What's your backup plan? Always make sure that you can try to think outside of the box. And again, I know that's not always easier said than done, but sometimes the more you can have critical thinking skills, the more impressive you can be to the employer. Tips on speaking with confidence. Do you remember taking a college course or a high school course in high school on speaking? A lot of people are scared to death of speaking in front. For me, I feel comfortable, but again, not everybody is like that. But to speak with confidence is an interview. This is an opportunity to sell yourself. Be sincere, be passionate, be yourself. Some people are very talkative. I like to talk, but also to be very careful that you don't overtalk. I've talked to a lot of people in our office, and you could overtalk. Sometimes you're giving out too much information. So again, be mindful of that. Say positive things about yourself, and also be respectful of the interviewer's time. Don't use negative statements about yourself. Oh, I guess I can do this. I'm pretty good. I think I can do this. Again, we need to speak with confidence. You can still speak with confidence without being arrogant. For example, I could say to an interview, I enjoy getting up in front of crowds and speaking. I enjoy working on a computer. I don't mind helping other people learn. So be aware of that. Don't apologize for lack of experience. Sell your experience and the ability to learn quickly. For example, the employer may ask you, do you know how to work with pivot tables on Excel? You might think to yourself, well, what is a pivot table? You could say, I know basics of Excel, but I'm always willing to learn more. I can take online classes, or I can even work with some work time, and I can take outside classes. I'm always willing to learn. Don't feel guilty about saying positive things about yourself. Because if you don't speak good about yourself, who will? Also, never, ever speak negatively about past employers. Sometimes you just want to rip them apart. Don't do that, because you never know. The person you're speaking to might know somebody who knows somebody. So again, speak positively about as much as you can. Know your weaknesses. Take a perceived negative and make it into a positive. Like Dale Carnegie used to say, take a lemon, make it into lemonade. Employers want honest people. How are you improving? For example, one of my weaknesses could be I'm too detailed oriented. Sometimes I could be so detailed oriented, I might be making up a presentation, and instead of worrying about my content, I might look at the fonts or the colors. Sometimes I'll add some noises in. It's like, okay, Joanne, you're spending too much time on this. Before you know it, I might have 30 minutes wrapped up. So again, it's good to be detailed oriented, but sometimes you have to know when to take that negative and make it into a positive. So instead of spending too much time, spend a little time and moving on. For example, maybe you talk too much. I know I'm guilty of that too. But again, be aware of that. Again, when you're talking to an employer, be respectful. Think a second and answer the question, give an example, and then stop. I would encourage you to let the employer take the lead in the interview. Again, process for answering questions. In our office, we like to use what's called the STAR method. S stands for specific. T talks about the task. A talks about the action. And R means the result. So again, I know in your 12-page handout, there's an example in there that you can look at. But again, listen to the question. Think of a situation. What task was required? Who did it involve? Who, when, what action, and what was the outcome of it? So make sure that you have some examples for this by preparation. Again, this is where the Allen County Public Library can have books or come to the WorkOne office, and we'll be more than happy to help you. Random questions. This is a good one. I know the other day I was listening to a radio station, and it was through, I think it was a website, Glassdoor. And one of the questions was that the employer asked, when was the last time you lied to someone? What I just did, you want to avoid doing. Be careful how you react. Don't laugh too much, roll your eyes, and get too angry. But try to keep a serious face. You can still smile, but be careful of random questions. Many times employers will ask you this to know what type of personality you have. Here's a common one. If you could be a tree, what kind of a tree would you be? Oh, I'd be an oak because it's so strong. Again, be aware this gives an employer the type of personality that you may have into the company. The question of pay. The conversation may go as follows. I've done some research into the salary for this position, and you may have a specific number in mind. Again, I'm going to encourage you to do some research on this. You might want to give a range. There is a website called Hoosier by the Numbers. Hoosier by the Numbers gives labor market information, and it also gives you different types of pay ranges, also what careers are going to be in demand in the next 10 years. So if you can give the range for it, you won't be changing, asking too much or too little. You could say, for example, on the research I've done, this position can pay between $55,000 and $65,000. I'm willing to negotiate. Total compensation. Many times employers during the interview will go over some of the benefits. And again, sometimes this will go ahead of time. What happens if the employer does not talk about compensation or benefits? Should you ask this question at the end of the interview, or is this for the second interview? With this, I know for myself, I would play it. I would be more on the conservative side. I probably would not ask that question in an interview. I know I have other people I know that would probably ask it in the interview. So again, I would say if you can do some research on the company, seeing what other companies can pay. Also, do your homework with this. And again, what do you feel comfortable? If you feel comfortable in asking it, by all means do. For myself, I don't feel comfortable. I would probably wait. So again, listen to your gut instinct. Here are some commonly asked questions. For example, tell me a little bit about yourself. What can you tell me about the company? What are your strengths and weaknesses? You tell me a little bit about yourself. You could say, well, I'm from Ohio. I went to college. I belong to a sorority. No, not that. When they say, tell me a little bit about yourself, What are some of the, what can you bring to the employer? For example, you could say, hey, I have a bachelor's degree in education. I went to this college and this was my major. This is what I can do for your company. I have Six Sigma background. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Tell me about a time you had a conflict with a coworker or a customer. I can almost guarantee you that question right there, when you had a conflict, how did you resolve it? Make sure that you answer that and you proceed that ahead of time, because I'm almost sure that one will come available. Here are some more commonly asked questions. If money was no object, what would be your ideal job? What kind of training or experience do you have for this job? Do you have computer skills? If we hired you, how would you make your organization better? What can you bring to the company? Hey, I can bring, the last job I had, I was able to save the company $3 million. Well, what did you do? This is what I implemented. So again, give examples, paint a picture for the employer. Also too, make sure that you know working with deadlines. I know in the past, I've worked with different employers. I've had 5 deadlines. They're all due. For example, I would say to my supervisor, you know, I think this is most important. But if you talk to a supervisor, out of those 5, what I think might be most important, the employer might have a different one. So make sure that you communicate with your employer. If you have multiple deadlines, which one is the most, which one has to be done first? Talk to your supervisor if you need to. Closing the interview. It's good to ask interviewer questions. It shows that you express an interest in the position. For example, the person interviewing me, I could say, what do you like best about your job? How long have you been employed with this company? When will a decision be made? Can I follow up? If the employer says, we'll follow up with you within the next week or 2, be mindful of that and give the employer at least 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, I would then, if you're still interested in the job, you could follow up with an email or with the phone call. Make sure when you are interviewing that you get each interviewer's name, email address, job title, and phone numbers so you can follow up with a thank you. Evaluate the interview. I think it's very important that you sit down and you be aware. For example, did I miss any crucial details? Oop, I really messed up on that question. I need to practice that question more. So practice those tough questions and be prepared for those answers. After the interview, this is extremely important. Again, as I mentioned, if there are 5 people interviewing me, I'm going to make sure I have each person's name, job title, phone number, and email address. I'm going to follow up with a thank you letter or email. You never know, this may give me an edge over someone else. If I forget something in our interview, I could add that in my thank you note saying, by the way, I want to let you know I'm still interested, and this is something additional for you. Usually send the thank you letter or note within 24 to 48 hours. Make it brief. State your purpose, saying, I'm still interested in the job, and this is what I can do for your company. Restate your strong interest and follow up. Again, highlight some of the key points of the interview. If you don't highlight some key points of the interview, the employer may think, did you pay attention? By giving some key points, that shows the employer that you are interested. Putting it all together. Know yourself, know the position, research the salary. We shared with you a couple of websites. One is called InsideIndianaBusiness.com. The other one is Hoosier by the Numbers. Make sure that you're dressed appropriately. Make sure that you're prepared for the interview. Remember, I believe the more interviews you participate in, the better you will become. You can learn from each interview and be prepared. Here are some of our sources. We want to thank you for coming today and for joining today's program. Now I'm going to turn the program over to Christella.
Okay, thank you, Joanne. That was a lot of very helpful information. Does anybody have any questions? Feel free to type that in the chat. We've included some of the links that Joanne mentioned. Don't see any yet, but let me go ahead and highlight some of the resources the library provides. We just came out with this pocket guide to job search information. We have these at all of our branches. Feel free to email us if you'd like a copy of it. We also I just wanted to highlight some books we have. We have Job Interviews for Dummies. It'd be very helpful for you. We have some sample question books, which I find extremely helpful to just go through some of these questions and plan your answers to them before the interview. It can give you a lot of confidence, and a lot of times you can adapt your questions to different answers and things like that. So thanks for everybody for coming. If you have any other that you think of, the information on the slide there, you can email the library at ask@acpl.info and contact WorkOne. I know you mentioned you can do some mock interviews. You can contact WorkOne to set that up. So, yep. Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Have a good day.